Thanks for checking out Chamber Web TV. This is Cambridge Votes 2014, a conversation with the candidates for the upcoming October 27th municipal election. I'm Greg DeRoche, your President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to sit down with mayoral candidate Harpinder Singh. How are you?
Very well. Nice
The
to
last
see you.
time we saw each other was at the Rogers debate.
Rogers debate, yeah, that was very exciting. I was very nervous, but you
You shouldn't be nervous. You look like an old pro up there. I actually thought you had a media background.
Wow. Nope, I was just myself. So.
You did a great job, though, and I was certainly proud. Anybody in your age demographic would be proud of you standing up and saying what you had to say, because I think you have a great message. But we've got our own agenda,
of course,
as you probably well know. But the first question I want to ask you, Harpinder, is the toughest question you'll ever be asked if you ever run for political office anywhere. Why is Harpinder Singh running?
Good question. Tricky question. Personal question. I think it's a various things. It's there's a sort of type of malaise that's crept into the city that I've noticed. It's a stagnation or an acceptance of our place and our role within this technology triangle. And I don't see any, from my perspective, I don't see those huge, bold ideas kind of coming out of our city. We're almost sitting and watching others attract those businesses and tech industries, and we're just kind of there as a city, which, I mean, it's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
I grew up in it, and I love it. But I think going forward, we need to be bolder.
Are we not seizing our assets?
I think our assets would be our educated youth. And I think we're losing them. It's almost like they're leaking to other cities. But we have them here, and to put them to work here, to have them spend money here, have others spend money here, is what our goal should be going forward.
Well, I've often said that. We've had a couple of conversations with candidates that, where I will tell them, I can remember my kids growing up and kind of looking around town saying, there's nothing for me here in Cambridge. I can't wait to grow up and move to a more vibrant place. Do you think we have that?
It's a great place to live, and I think that's undeniable. Because my upbringing, I loved it. I know everyone around me, they've grown up well, and
and you have no interest in moving.
No. And the issue is what's next for our generation, because I think there's a huge shift in what the city looked like 25 years ago, or when my parents got here, when a lot of the space in Cambridge was farms, and then the John Galt Centre opened up, and then other businesses started being built, and now we're on sort of a precipice of change that's about to come, and what are we going to do?
And are we going to be leaders or followers of
Exactly, yeah. Are we going to stand up and say, Cambridge is here, and attract the right businesses? Or
So you're running for an entire generation.
I think a lot of people are. I think every time that someone stands up and runs for office, they're running for their generation, but I think there's so many people around me that are running their own races, if you will. Like they've got families, they're going through school, kids going through school for the first time in their family's history and graduating university. I think everyone is doing a fantastic job. But I think it's a lot of pressure to say I'm running for a generation. I'm running. I'm running.
Well, you don't have broad shoulders, but we're painting broad shoulders on
yes.
you. You can carry the weight, young man.
That's true.
I think you do a great job of that. Tell me something, Harpinder. What do you think is the number one issue facing Cambridge and other municipalities in the province?
I think the number one issue is growth. Growth in terms of our roads, growth in terms of immigration and people coming to the city, growth in terms of attracting foreign investment and businesses, and job growth, long-term job growth. So I think the word is growth and collaboration with other cities, and how can that growth benefit us as a city, and how can we keep up with that growth? Because I think there's the amount of people that are going to come to this region in the next 15 years. I think the number is 200,000 people. that's sort of the growth we need to tap into, and we need to be ready for that. I think we're building roads, fixing roads, which makes sense, but I think we need to be able to be a city that attracts those people here. And I think growth is probably the number one.
Do you think it's not enough to just say they can come to the region? You're saying you want to make sure Cambridge gets its share.
Yeah, I think I know we'll touch on the issue of like a convention center and that sort of stuff. I think it's cementing our place within, if we're a tech triangle, or if we're, this region that so many people are taking notice of around the world. Cambridge is a part of it. We're 15, 20 minutes away from places that are attracting world-class businesses. We're not far from there. And from what I've heard, our heat, hydro taxes are competitive. And we ought to be attracting those people, because that difference between 15 and 20 minutes away isn't huge. We have spaces that aren't being utilized, and it's about bringing those businesses here and putting people to work here.
Yep. No, I think you're right. It makes some sense. Harpinder, I've asked you this question on TV, but I'm going to ask you here now. You're in the confines of the chamber. It's just you and me.
Can't escape.
The chamber's looking for people who have some big, bold ideas, and we always have been, not just for the next 4 years, but beyond. What's Harpinder Singh's big, bold idea?
I think for me, it's a couple of things. It's innovation and the issues surrounding urban intensification, and I think the issues surrounding the LRT sort of tapped into that idea of urban intensification, using the areas that we have and using them wisely. I think is the bold idea, and moving forward, this means standing up and having people take notice of us, bringing them to those spaces, and
so building up rather than out.
Up and building on if you go downtown, or if you go around Cambridge, there's a lot of places that are sort of shuttered. My dad, he worked in a factory for around 30 years and it shut down. And I think no one's opened up a business there. It's still
empty.
It's still there. So these places exist. Our taxes are competitive. And I think the bold idea is standing up and saying, come here to Cambridge, because we have people that can work. We're going to be connected to other cities, pushing for pushing for people to come here so they can work in this city.
Really, it's about, you talk a lot about it. You know, I remember in economic development, they talk about bringing in a warehouse as opposed to a factory. In a warehouse you bring in, and that's fine. They're going to be taxpayers, and that's, it all works. But there's 30 people working in a huge warehouse. In the same size building, from a factory's perspective, you may have 250 people working in there.
Exactly.
So more effective use of that big piece of property. And what you're really saying is same thing in the community. We need to make sure we're utilizing every opportunity to make the most out of every piece of property we have.
Yeah, effective. I mean, if you look at Kitchener, for example, Google's opened up a place there in Kitchener. So how big is that, and what is it doing for the community? It doesn't have to be a giant tract of land. It's about getting the right companies here, because everyone's noticing this area.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think, I was thinking about it last night. There's a river of information and talent kind of flowing past us, Toronto to KW, and we're in the middle of it. We're not that far from there. We need to kind of, catch it and be a part of that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. The regional area municipalities are looking at it, creating a regional economic development organization. And the primary reason was as a result of the Chamber's pressure on the region and the area municipalities when we lost Maple Leaf to Hamilton. And there was another company called Dr. Oetker who was thinking about moving here, and we lost the opportunity there because they just simply didn't seem, I guess, to feel the love. We have some issues around it. We're very concerned, and the reason we're very concerned is Cambridge is largely an industrial community. We have the largest per capita factory worker in Ontario. Kitchener and Waterloo, a little bit different, not quite as intensive in manufacturing, more into institutional and high-tech type of we're a little bit concerned at jumping in as one big happy family to do an economic development piece when the focus of attention's got to be around the LRT. It's got to be around intensification and building up instead of out. And you know, while Cambridge has opportunities for that, we don't have the LRT. So that focus, we're concerned that regional focus is going to be there as opposed to looking for plants and factories and industries that could come in and maybe take up some of our vacant spots, or build new. What's your thoughts on a regional economic development program?
I think it makes a lot of sense. We can't I said this during the debate, we're not an island, right? We can't just go at it alone and say, you know, we got this, because we need to be a part of this region. And I think Kitchener and Waterloo, as much as we might look at them and say, you know, we want to be competitive and we want to attract businesses here, these cities can help each other grow and expand. And I think it's important to be a part of that dialogue. And if Cambridge isn't a part of that dialogue, we're going to be left even more behind, because those talks are happening, and we need to be at the table for those talks. It's important to attract foreign investment, and if there's a organization in place that can attract the right type of foreign investment for our city, for the region, Cambridge needs to be a part of that dialogue and say, you know, we would help open this up here in our city. You know, it's no longer just, we aren't just a city in Ontario, because the world's so global now. We're so connected. In a few clicks, I can contact, you know, a multinational company and reach out to them, and they could write back. And I think if that dialogue is happening, Cambridge has to be on par with the other cities, and they have to be a part of the dialogue.
No, I would agree. As you probably know, maybe you don't know, but the Chamber was opposed to LRT. We were opposed to it for various reasons, not because we didn't think public transportation was important, but we felt that was the wrong technology at the wrong time. And, of course, the concern that the entire transit corridor couldn't be utilized at the time, that it would have to be done in stages. I recognize that from a financial perspective, but there were options of creating mass transportation, you know, elevated in all one fell swoop for less money than what we're paying for just one leg of the LRT. However, I like to use that as, this is my time to let everybody know I'm still a little bitter, but I got over it because democracy upheld.
Yep.
We had a vote.
Yep.
Majority said yes, we want to go ahead with LRT, so we've got it.
Yep.
However, in order to get that Cambridge leg, we may be able to, because we now have a provincial government in there with a mandate. We've got a representative of that provincial government in Cambridge.
Yep.
But we still need to demonstrate ridership.
Yep.
We still need to prove that we need it. What would you do as mayor to make sure that happens?
I think the focus of the LRT should be a long-term one. Now, if we look at the LRT now in terms of, you know, dollars and cents, we might say this is a ridiculous amount of money to spend on just, you know, connecting, you know, us
Two malls?
Yeah. So it's daunting just to look at the numbers now. But what does it mean for Cambridge in 50 or 100 years to be connected like that? What does it mean when we do set up a convention center, when people do come to the city via GO Train, when we do have businesses here, and when people are flowing back and forth from Kitchener and Waterloo? What does it look like then, right? It's about sort of that vision that Cambridge is a connected place, right? I think the airport in the region is another thing that plays into that sort of connectivity. The LRT stop, an LRT stop here means people go from Kitchener and Waterloo to Cambridge, and Cambridge kind of connects with them, and it's mutually beneficial. I can see it being mutually beneficial. Right now, perhaps we aren't on par with Kitchener and Waterloo, but that vision and drive to make Cambridge into something that's level is important. And I think once we are there, the LRT is going to make much more sense to us, because they're going to need to be connected to us, because we're going to be that city that's...
But the experts would tell you that first of all, the first leg doesn't have the ridership
Yep.
or even expected ridership. And Cambridge likely won't have it for till the turn of the century, which is a long time away.
Yeah.
So what do we do in the meantime to say, no, we need to advance that. We want it sooner rather than later. We need to be connected sooner rather than later. How do we go about creating an atmosphere in Cambridge where we can find riders and demonstrate that
Yeah.
this is a critical need?
I think, and I spoke to this earlier about the 200,000 people that
Yeah.
are coming into the region. I think it's creating sort of a vibrant arts community, a place where things are happening, where people are stopping in Cambridge, getting off in Cambridge, spending money in Cambridge. That would show ridership.
GO
Right
train?
now-
Would the GO train help?
Definitely, yeah. The GO train is huge. I used to teach in the Jane and Finch area, and a lot of my friends would get on GO and go to various cities and kind of come back home. It's such an important connection where people from Cambridge can connect to other cities and understand what's going on there and bring that knowledge back to Cambridge. And it's again another door for Cambridge to another avenue for knowledge and information and people flowing in. Now, right now, if we look at Cambridge and say that there isn't ridership, I think we're limiting ourselves before that expansion of population. I think it's stopping before the race has even begun,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. You know?
Yeah, I think it's critically important too, though. But if we're going to have it, let's have it, and let's
Yeah.
get there as soon as we can.
Of course.
And look at opportunities that to increase ridership.
For sure. It's going back to what you were saying before. It's the attention of the world and attention of the tech industries and the attention of sort of the knowledge-based industry is on this region right now.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do right now? What are people going to say when they look back at us 50 years, 100 years from now? What did Cambridge do? Did they kind of just say, we don't want to spend that money? Or did they say, we need to be connected right now because stuff is happening right now?
I'd rather them look back and say, you did a good job.
Yeah.
The number one issue around the chamber boardroom is the convention center. We've been on this for 30 years. It's something we feel is critically important to build a vibrant economy in Cambridge. There'll only be one convention center in the region of Waterloo, and we, of course, think, based on our geographic location, it should probably be here. Not necessarily saying that needs to be, big expenditure on behalf of the city. I'm talking about a convention center.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
As soon as I heard about this, I fell in love with the idea. It made complete sense to me. And actually, I don't know, I can show you. I printed off some pictures of some convention centers from around the world.
Oh.
They're kind of neat. So we got one here from Sydney, Australia. It's sort of like a
very nice.
round, like sort of like a spaceship and interesting place. There's one in Tokyo. Looks like there's 4 upside down pyramids. It's interesting, right? It's got the thing. And then a few more, but I won't waste too much time. But I think that a convention center is an invitation. A convention center is a place where people are going to gather, people who are important. We could have TED Talks here. We could bring in the tech industry to give demonstrations or have keynotes here. We could bring in all sorts of leaders and creative thinkers to Cambridge. Imagine that. Imagine saying, we're going to meet in Cambridge for this. We're going to go to Cambridge for this. And having an airport right there that connects us to the world and say, in Cambridge, Ontario, there's going to be this conference happening. That's
Gee.
encompasses.
You're saying it better than I've ever said it. You're getting me all excited.
It is. It's exciting. In 1998, I think there was talk of a consultant kind of telling us that we need this much space.
Yep.
From then to now, the landscape is shifted so much, and I think we have the ability to have something that's iconic here in Cambridge, and it'll be like a gateway to our city, and it'll represent our city.
And maybe the region.
And maybe the region. I think the immediacy of this should make us nervous. Just how important it is right now to have this. It's almost like there's an exam that we're writing that's a month late and we haven't handed it in. We should be nervous about this because we have a chance to do something huge here. And to not understand that, or not understand the necessity of investing, right? Like, we both know what it means to make a good investment. This is a good investment. It's going to cost money. Yeah. But again, what is Cambridge going to think of us in 50 or 100 years, right? And it's I wrote this morning, but it's a place to gather, share ideas. It's a destination. It's a place we can invite giants of industry to. And it's not about the building or costs, although they are crucial. It's about what the convention center represents. And it's an invitation, again, for businesses and new ideas. And I think it's crucial for people to understand that it's not about plopping a building down and spending a bunch of money, right? It's about the fact that there is a need for this sort of place in this region, and it is going to be used. It's more than just constructing and throwing money at something that's not going to work.
I think it'd get good use.
Oh yeah.
Just in this part of Ontario, it would get good
of course.
use. You know, it would.
I could talk all day.
I'm big on. I know. I could too. I've been talking all day on it for some 20 years, but or more. But
yeah.
You know, I think it's good, and that may be your big bold idea, but we are looking for individuals that have big bold ideas, not just for the next 4 years, but beyond. What's Harpinder Singh's big bold idea?
I think, again, speaking to growth, it's about sort of capturing attention is the big bold idea, and a convention center obviously is.
So what you're relating to when you talk about growth, you're talking about not just growing the municipality, but you're growing the demographic of the municipality and actually leading it down a path of change.
Yeah, I think it's growing right before our eyes. It has grown in the city. You can see obviously. You know, you've been here longer than I have. You've seen it grow in front of your eyes, and now, you know.
Well, it's changed. It's changed. When I was young, it was a textile community.
Yep.
You know, shoes and textile.
Yeah, and you know, downtown looked different. Hesper Road, this area looked different. And when I was young, I still have pictures of when I was young and kind of areas around Cambridge that are totally different now. It's changed rapidly, but now it's about what are the changes coming up and what does it mean for, you know, those kids walking around with cell phones now, and there's 5-year-olds with iPads and stuff, and they're kind of, I remember one time I went into a classroom, I'm a teacher, so I went into a classroom and I was teaching a kindergarten class, and this kid was sitting in front of the computer and he started kind of tapping on the computer screen. It was just a regular computer, but he's so used to playing on the touch screens. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this is what's happened, this is what's next. So it's that.
And they're intuitive to it. They pick it up and they know how to, you know, I get a new device and I give it to my 13-year-old daughter and she sets it up for me.
Exactly. And that's who we're doing this for. And that gateway is for them. Yeah. And those people coming in are going to be here talking to them and sort of, you know, working with them. And that's what.
And I really believe a convention center is part of that change and changes everything. Taxes, the city of Cambridge, the entire budget's about $102 million, somewhere in that area. About 70% of it comes from the taxpayer, property tax. The other 30% comes from user fees, building permit fees, those kinds of things. There isn't enough money coming in to tackle the infrastructure deficit. You can blame City Hall all you want, but every municipality in Ontario faces exactly the same thing. So it's not just our City Hall. It's everybody's City Hall or the complex web of government. We can't do it. You can't go out and double taxes to take care of it because the property taxpayer will go crazy. You've got to have some sort of other mechanism. What would you propose to find out or find a way in which we can deal with this infrastructure deficit?
I think that I was kind of sitting down and thinking about this, and I realized that the answers that I was already giving were the answers to this question. So if we're an interconnected city, if we're supporting the airport, if we're building a convention center, if we're connecting to the other cities through an economic forum, those things right there, and the belief that Cambridge is a viable place to invest, I think all those things together will help bring down the deficit. It might not be tomorrow, because those things aren't in place. And running a deficit, you know, it's when you run a deficit, people get nervous about running a deficit. But if we're investing properly, and if this region is growing, which it is, and everyone knows it's growing, you know, it makes sense to keep investing knowing that we're going to get a return. If we weren't in this region, it wouldn't make sense to have a convention center. It wouldn't make sense to build a giant train system here and pay into it. It wouldn't make sense. We wouldn't be able to pay off that deficit for 200 years.
Yeah.
But we're in a unique place. And I think that we should be, I don't want to say okay, but I'm going to say I think we should be okay with our deficit, knowing and having faith in what this city's going to look like in the future.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about, and I said it 3 times, but the 200,000 people coming into the city, those are people that are going to spend money in our businesses. They're going to work here in the places that we've created and the companies we've invited here.
Yeah.
Attracting businesses through competitive property taxes. Again, convention center. And we can't kind of focus on short-term fixes or just, you know, trying to erase the deficit by raising taxes and getting rid of it in 5 years. This isn't a race. It's kind of like a long marathon. And the ideas that we put in place right now are going to help us finish that marathon and hopefully turn it around and get a surplus. You know.
Yeah, I think it all has opportunity.
Yeah.
Our airport, and you mentioned it a couple of times,
Yeah.
but our airport's, we think, a key economic driver. I use it quite extensively whenever I have the opportunity to fly American out of there. And even though I have to change planes in Chicago, I've gotten to really like the burgers you can get at O'Hare, and it's easy. It's wonderful if you don't mind changing planes. And I, quite frankly, I don't mind, considering I'm supporting my own airport.
Of course.
So, but there were some opportunities that the region had to look at. How do we grow the airport, or what do we do? Option 1 was do nothing. Option 2 was do nothing except paint the outside of the building, basically. I say that facetiously. Option 3, however, and 4, really talked about attracting private sector investment to extend the runways, to build out, you know, create opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and bring their businesses, service industries to the airport industry. But you know, it's really almost the type of thing, an airport, you can't get the airline to come before you've got the airport to service it, because they got no place to land.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's back to the old Field of Dreams thing. You do have to build it before they come. And that's just the way our airports work. However, the regional council said, no, we're going to put it on hold. We don't want to do that. Yet the options were private sector money driven, not taxpayers money driven. And they would have to find that money first. What do you think about our airport? And should we be looking at finding ways where we can expand that airport through private sector dollars, of course?
We should expand the airport. I think it's the same argument as a convention center or LRT or GO. It's another gateway, and it's a much bigger gateway to the outside world. It's a much bigger gateway for people to come to this region, to come to our city. It's down the street. Like there's an airport down the street. It's, if you actually sit down and really think about it, you know, we have an airport here that flies planes to other countries, right? Like the US and places like Calgary. I still remember when my uncle from BC came down for the first time, and it was literally a 15-minute drive to our house from that airport, and it was really weird because
a little bit different than Pearson.
So we've always had people travel here, and it was one of those jarring moments where I'm just like, I can just hop in my car and just go down the street and come back home. was kind of
refreshing.
weird.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
refreshing and,
Yeah.
and interesting, right? I think expanding that airport is a no-brainer, and I think the private sector would support that. I think the private sector would stand up because they need it.
Yeah.
It's right here, just like how you can go down the street and you can travel for business.
Yeah.
We have Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, Cambridge, so many places close to here with business leaders and you know, startups and people going to travel to
Yeah,
different
yeah.
cities and stuff. It's like right here. There's an airport right here, and expanding that is only beneficial to us. Like I don't see any, aside from of course noise pollution and that
Yes,
sort of thing,
yeah.
which is
But those all have to be mitigated anyway.
Yeah.
There's rules and laws around
course.
that, right?
of course. But I think expanding it is a no-brainer. People don't have to go to Toronto to go to different parts of to get their business and stuff going. Are we not trying to attract foreign investment? So if we are going to try to open up businesses and attract foreign investment, we have to make it as easy as possible for them
Yeah.
to conduct business here. So if there's someone in Chicago or a company that's founded out of Chicago that wants to open up some sort of knowledge-based thing in this region, and we're attractive enough, there's an airport right here for them to do business and to travel through. And it's convenient, and this region needs it more than anything. It's we're connected through wires, but that airport connects us by bringing people here, and I think that's
Well, it's like you mentioned earlier, with an airport right here, how booming would a convention center be where people
yeah.
could fly in from all over
Yeah.
the world, and, we'd have some wonderful people visiting our community and leaving their money here, which is what we
Exactly.
really like to see.
Yeah, and I mean, what better way to put us on the map
Yeah.
than have a place where people can literally just,
I know. It's just awesome to use. I just
Yep.
love the airport. Harpinder,
Yep,
what's your Cambridge look like in 25 years?
it's a good question. I think all of the things that we kind of spoke about, so we just talked about the airport,
Yep.
the GO, the LRT, convention center, urban intensification. I think all those things play into having a city that's vibrant, but also respects the environment and where it comes from. I think that, the streets that I walked down with my grandma when I was a kid, or the parks that I walk through, ought to be protected. Wildlife ought to be protected, and people are flocking to those sorts of areas that are calm and peaceful and places that they can actually work in. So a city that's utilizing its space properly while having parks and places for recreation at the same time, Cambridge can be something really, really special in terms of that. People can live here. It's clean. It's going to be a place to work. It's going to be a place to check out TED Talks or conventions and that kind of stuff. I think it's a mesh between history and the future, and I think it's going to be unique in terms of those two things.
Well, if we get that convention center, just for you, I'm going to
Yeah.
bring in Simon Sinek.
Okay.
And he's one of the best TED Talks I've seen is what Simon does on there. So
Oh, awesome! I've seen some.
He'd be-
I've seen Ken Robbins, and I've seen so many of them. They're amazing.
I'll send you a link to this
Okay.
my favorite Simon Sinek one, and
Okay.
and you'll really enjoy it.
Awesome.
But speaking of technology and
Yep.
all of that kind of stuff, and I'm so excited. I get to vote this year
Yep.
online. Now, I've always believed that internet's over 25 years old.
Yep.
It's the 21st century. I do my banking online. I buy stuff online. I can do security investment online. Back in the 90s, I asked the clerk's department to look into online voting because
Wow.
the internet was here to stay.
Yep.
There was no question about it. I understand there's security issues, but I'm excited enough. Normally, I'm a traditionalist. I love waiting right until my wife laughs at me. I like to wait for dinner, have dinner, and then get up and get dressed and go over to the poll and exercise my right to vote.
A ritual, right?
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
a ritual thing. But this time, no. October the 11th, I'm going to get my wife to take a picture of me in my pajamas voting at 11 o'clock at night because I think it's about time. What do you think?
I think it's, and again, I would just want to thank you for in the 90s for kind of thinking ahead and going, I want to be able to vote online. I think that's important. I went to there was a presentation at City Hall about online voting, and they had a few people from the U of T there who are going to be analyzing this vote. And they showed a map of Ontario and all the different municipalities. And throughout the last, I think, 12 years, the adoption of online voting is really spread. Not everyone's doing it yet, but it's really spread. And Cambridge is a part of this now. And I think that online voting is about accessibility. I think that's one of the main things. People that perhaps can't go out to polls, people who are otherwise busy maybe, who can't make it, people who have, who can't access it physically, can actually go online.
Maybe work out of town, can't get back in time for the
Yep.
polls to close.
I have a few friends that are actually going to be traveling. They're like, when is the election? Oh no, I might not be there for the election, and because I said the 27th, and I said, don't worry, there's going to be an online voting thing, right? And they're like, oh sweet, so we can just they can take 10-15 minutes and they voted
from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and it's their city as much as it is
Sure.
the person who's here physically voting, but they might not be able to vote. And every vote matters,
Absolutely.
and it counts. And I think,
And I think, everybody's worried a little bit about voter fraud. My goodness. Ever since the very beginning, when it used to be straw votes or hand votes, everybody's tried to put up the two hands. And, there's always that. And you have to expect that whenever you're going out seeking information and people get passionate.
Yeah, and I think at the presentation that was done, they said that there's going to be a system in place that's going to have checks. So there's going to be, I think, different ways to log in. You have to have 2 security things to actually be able to log in.
Yeah.
So, if people are going to fraud the system, they're going to fraud the system.
Yeah.
That's something that perhaps, we can't avoid. But the 2 mechanisms there almost ensure that you're not going to have that sort of fraud. And they're in place for a reason. And it's worked in all those other areas. I mean, I think Mississauga saw a 300% increase in voting when it was implemented.
Yeah,
300%.
that's huge.
That's huge, yeah. And I think the window of voting is amazingly
Long.
Yeah, it's
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Instead of having a day where someone may or may not make it, or we have congestion at the polls, or parking issues, and people not being able to
Weather.
It's going to be at the end of
things.
October. Yeah, and it's you have 2 weeks, which is like a million hours, and it's all there, and you can actually sit down and sort of study and understand who the candidates are in that period, instead of running kind of last minute and that kind of
Absolutely.
stuff.
Well, they can all go on the chamber site and
Of course.
see the videos and sit there as long as they want watching
replay
videos.
them. And,
Seeing the same questions and hopefully different answers.
Yeah.
So. Well, that's great, Harpinder. It's been great to have you here. Any last words for the voters of Cambridge?
Yeah, I kind of wrote something down, and
Sure.
I'll read it. The role of mayor is a multifaceted one, but mainly they are in charge of being the chief spokesperson for a municipality. For Cambridge, this means ensuring businesses and tech giants take notice of Cambridge and support our organizations when they have grand ideas. It means having enough experience to advocate for the future, to create a town that isn't driven past, but is driven to. To be the spokesperson for an interconnected city, you must be ready for what is to come, and I believe that I am. If we sit back and watch other cities attract the best companies in the world, we are going to have some problems as a city. This is your city. You will help shape it this election, and I hope you will vote for Singh come election time. I thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, folks, for checking out Chamber Web TV again. And this is Cambridge Votes 2014, a conversation with the candidates for the October 27th municipal election. Again, I'm Greg DeRocher, and it's been my pleasure to sit down with the spirited and vibrant mayoral candidate, Harpinder Singh. Harpinder, good luck.
Thank you.